Good morning again to everyone, and thank you very much for joining our webinar this morning. Our webinar is titled Improving Channel Partner Relationships Globally, and my name is Hanan Greenberg. I will be your host for today, and I'm from Model N. With me today is Ron Ryan, who I will introduce very shortly. Just as a few comments about logistics and the content of today's webinar, we will go through a brief introduction of Ron, and then we will proceed to discuss the project that Cambium Networks embarked on to improve their channel data management, and with that, their working relations with their channels and partners. And we will open up for a Q&A session at the end of today's webinar. Now, as we go through the webinar, for those of you who would like to submit questions to Ron, please go to the QA tab on the WebEx window and type in your questions there. You can send them into Model N host or to the panelists, and we will see those questions, and we will try and go through as many of the questions that we receive throughout the event. So you don't have to wait until the end before you send them in. Feel free to type them in as we go along, and we will go through them and try and address as many as possible. So with that, let us get started with a brief introduction. For those of you who are unfamiliar with me, my name is Hanan Greenberg, and I'm the Vice President and General Manager of the High-Tech Business at Model N. And it is my distinct pleasure to have me today, Ron Ryan, who is Vice President of Global Channels and Operations at Cambium Networks. Just a few words on Ron's bio. Ron started his career in the semiconductor industry, where he spent 15 years working for Arrow Electronics in the distribution space in a variety of roles, including sales, operations, product management, marketing, and general management. In 2001, he changed industries and moved to the wireless infrastructure business, joining Hutton Communications as Executive Vice President of Sales, and eventually became the Chief Operating Officer. And 3 years ago, Ron joined Cambium Networks, a global manufacturer of end-to-end wireless connectivity, as part of the executive team running all global channels and channel operations. So, Ron, welcome to our webinar. Good morning.
Good morning, Hanan. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. So, Ron, as we discussed when we prepared for this webinar, I think it'll be good to go through a bit of a continuum of understanding what were the problems that Cambium was trying to address, and the impact of those, and how Cambium went about addressing them. And why don't we start by you giving us a brief overview of what were the problems that Cambium Networks needed to address in the context of channel data management?
Sure. So good morning, everybody. So just for those of you that don't know who we are, Cambium came out of, we were a private equity purchase out of Motorola, and you may know us by Canopy at that point in time. But we came out of Motorola with various processes and tools, but we virtually had to rebuild everything to manage the business by ourselves. Motorola doesn't sell you the processes and tools to manage the business. We were left to do that. We came out of Motorola with actually a competitive product to Model N. And when I joined the company, I spent some time trying to work with them with the data, trying to figure out how it worked and what we could do with it. And really, what I discovered is that we kept having constant data issues, data integrity issues. And since Cambium has a direct sales force as well as channel, we don't sell direct, but we do create demand direct. It's imperative that we pay our salespeople relative to their regional assignments. And that required that data to be pretty accurate. And unfortunately, with the data integrity being not really dependable, we had huge issues in paying our salespeople on time. And then even when we paid them, they were highly suspect of the data because it was error-prone, and they would find eventually things, and they didn't have a lot of time to vet it. So that was one of the significant ones we had, the issues we had. But we also had other problems in the fact that, trying to fix the data. We spent more time trying to fix it than actually using it. And then the data set we would get would be a giant spreadsheet that would be posted onto a portal, and it was up to us to kind of go in and make sense of the data and use it accordingly. Therefore, we had a lot of pivot tables and macros and things that went into the data, and of course that had problem sets all by itself. But as a result, we just had a huge issue paying our salespeople on time. We run a fairly sophisticated channel program that creates levels for pricing and other kinds of benefits that channel partners have that rely on really accurate data so that we can track their progress and make sure that they get the credits they deserve to reach those levels. And then the last thing really is that the spreadsheets that we would drive out of it, by the time we got it all done and got it all sorted out, it was dated 90 days, and you're back into the process starting over again for the next quarter. So those were the primary things that drove us to think about changing the way that we were going about it.
Thanks, Ron. So before I actually go into my follow-on question, which is the impact of all this, I'm curious about one thing, which is, you joined and these things became apparent to you pretty quickly. How long do you expect the company was experiencing these challenges before the decision was made to actually go and fix it?
It's interesting. That's a good question. I think that it had always been kind of an issue for them. What I really discovered is Motorola did not really use the data for the benefit of the channel program. They use it to pay the people, and they put a lot of time and effort, and they have a whole lot of resources that we don't have to go clean up the data. So I suspect that it was probably an issue long before I got to it. But as we came out and became much more dependent upon the data to be accurate, because we didn't have the headroom that Motorola had to be able to fix it all, became more and more important for it to be accurate. So I'm sure it was happening long before I got there. It just became a lot more important when we came out.
Okay. So you described a lot of operational issues that you just went through. So what was the actual impact to your channel business because of these problems?
So I would say that really I put those back into three categories. One of the key ones is that there is an interdependence that happens because we do sell only through channel. So our direct sales team, it's imperative that they work very close with the channel. We have various levels of channel partners. We have some that are national, some that are regional, some that are very, very local. And because of the lack of data integrity, what was happening, it was causing our salespeople to work very specifically with only the local partners they had, and quite frankly, ignore some of the national ones because they couldn't trust that the data would give them their credit. So it was really creating problems with our channel partners relative to the whole program itself. And a lot of them felt like they were being boxed out, which in fact they were by some of the salespeople because of that. The other thing that it caused was with the partner achievement levels, again, a very important piece of our channel program is tracking how well these channel partners are doing because it has significant financial impacts on them as a result of improving their status with us. So the way that manifests itself is that they would track them. When they would see that we would not have it accurate, it would result in a lot of manual intervention for us to sort it out individually with each partner, which took a lot more time on the back end. And again, I think that when it got down to managing all of these different spreadsheets and all the problems that created by itself, it was a huge problem. So, those things became significant issues for us, enough so that we felt we had to make a change.
Interesting. Actually, one more question along this line of what you mentioned earlier on about the salespeople and not being paid accurately or not being paid necessarily on time or accurately. What behavioral impact did that have on the salespeople? Did you find they were spending extra cycles to try and validate whether they're getting paid correctly? Did you ever try and estimate how much that time was?
Well, I can tell you that, and it was, oddly enough, it was at the most inopportune time for it to happen. The way the pay cycles work is we try to hit the compensation at least 4 weeks after quarter end close. it was happening closer to 6 weeks. And, it would take the 6th week, it would almost be lockdown with these guys. So you'd have managers in rooms going over data to get proper assignments. So I'm sure that, the individual man hours for each salesperson probably exceeded 10 to 15 hours a pay cycle. That's a quarter. We have, just in North America alone, we have 12 people. So you can extrapolate from there. It was pretty significant.
Yeah. Okay. So given the problems you described, the impact they were having, what were the specifics they were looking for in a new channel data management solution to resolve the issues, and why did you select the solution that you chose?
So another good question. First of all, we needed someone, because we're a global company, we needed someone that could manage the data globally. And recognizing that distributors in North America are not the same as distributors in Asia or EMEA, or for Cali, for example. We have various size distributors with various capabilities. And not everybody has these huge systems that they can just push a button and have data come out the other end. Some of these guys operate out of spreadsheets themselves in terms of data, pulling data out of their systems. So we really needed the ability for someone to be able to take data globally with different varying systems and capabilities of our partners, and then assimilate it into a single, and I'd say reliable, consistent, usable format. And ideally, in something that would have its own reporting structure. So we set out to look for, the kinds of people that can do that. That's a fairly narrow choice when you're talking global. You can find a lot of local people that will do it, but global is a different story. And we even considered doing it ourselves. We did a little work on the front end to see if, hey, just hire a couple of people and see if we could get them to manage this data. But at the end of the day, when it came out, the reason we selected at the time Channel Insight, now Model N, was the first thing I look for is references, and I started looking at it was a fairly impressive list of people, and some familiar to me back from my semiconductor days that you were already working with. And the thing that also grabbed my attention was the self-learning tool. That tool, what that allowed us to do is not start over every quarter. We basically would solve a problem once. The tool then would recognize the issue going forward, and that ostensibly that was a good feature if it worked. That was appealing to me, and I think some of the other things were just the reporting aspect of the standard reports that come out were also important when it came to and rather than us having multiple spreadsheets trying to make sense of the data, some of the standard reporting features were real important. So those were the selection criteria, and obviously Model N met most, if not all, of those.
Excellent, thank you. So you mentioned the reporting capabilities twice, actually. You mentioned it now at the end, and also at the beginning, one of the parameters you were looking for was for the baked-in capability of having a self-reporting kind of environment. And we work with a wide variety of companies. Some of them, like to take the data out of the system and bring it into some common data warehouse or reporting BI mechanism they have working for other parts of their business and do their reporting there, while others prefer what you preferred, which is an inherent capability to have reports being part of the solution. From your perspective, why was that important? Why was it important to be able to produce those reports within the solution itself?
So it goes back to the massive macro spreadsheets, and it's not that we can't pull out data from the data we get, but what I found was in looking at the basic spreadsheet or the basic reporting formats that were already there, the benefit of working with someone who has a breed of customers who have required things over the years, I think that what you have is you have you have what I would consider to be the 95% rule. I mean, most of the things that I would be looking for in trying to manage partners are already built into the reporting features. Very little would I look for outside of that. If I wanted to, I could go get it. But I'll give you an example. I just spent 2 weeks in Asia, and I got back last Friday, and I started to present some of the standard data sets to the distributors themselves, one of our partner events in India, and that they were so impressed with our ability to give them data back in a format that they themselves can't issue. When I got back, I picked up 3 more distributors who are now reporting because of that very thing. So I think what you have is a fairly robust set of reporting that already exists that's easy to drill down to and pretty effective.
Interesting. I didn't even think of that angle of dishing the data back out to the distributors and that being a compelling enough reason for you to be able to recruit more. So I think that's a very cool angle to this. So as you move forward and you were faced with the challenges, you could sort of articulate the impact of those challenges, you knew what kind of solution you were looking for, and you embarked on making the change, moving off one type of a solution which was sort of more, let's say, services people-oriented to a more technology-based solution. What were the main challenges that you encountered while you were making this transition and moving from one channel data management provider to another?
Yeah, that's an interesting question as well. Oddly enough, there weren't as many as I expected. Some of the things I think we learned along the way was we attempted to get history as part of, because I wanted to try to make the data sets that you guys were providing, I wanted to make those historically available as well as the go forward point, because I thought it would be pretty valuable for us as a new company coming out of Motorola if I could at least get 1 or 2 years of data, that it would give us a better start in working with the partners. That proved to be somewhat complex. There were language barriers about what you might call some data set versus what the previous vendor called it. Matching all those things up. As I mentioned, the data wasn't all that great to begin with from the other side, so it required a certain amount of intervention for us to try to get the most important things and realize what we needed to leave off. Those were significant undertakings. It would have been a lot easier just to start fresh going forward, but making that decision obviously complicated things a little bit. And then I think the other thing I would say, and for the people on the call, is that we decided halfway through the process, we didn't think that we needed the advanced sales credit assignment module. However, when it got into really mapping the data and looking at some of the requirements that we would eventually have in our federal reporting structure, we required individual SKUs, not geographical territory, but individual SKUs to drive assignment data for our sales reps, some of our sales reps. And that module provides that flawlessly. We decided halfway through to implement that. It would have been a lot easier for us to decide that up front. So I think in part it was our own fault for not scoping what our end result was. We eventually worked through it, but it created some complexity. But by and large, we had a fairly advanced time frame to try to get this done and run 2 systems. But I would say on the whole, it was pretty smooth.
Okay, excellent. Before we continue, by the way, just one logistic comment. I see a few questions that started coming in. So for those who want to continue sending in questions, please feel free to do that. Go to the Q&A tab and hit that and type in your question. You can send that question to either panelists or to the host, and we'll be happy to address as many questions as they come in. And as I said, we'll answer as many of these as we get to the Q&A session. But thanks for those who already submitted questions. So back to you, Ron.
Okay.
As we continue here, so we spoke again, just to recap on challenges, what type of solution you're looking for, the process of transitioning from one vendor solution to the Channel Insight or now Model N solution. When you now look into this, having made the transition, what are the results of the channel data management implementation from Channel Insight, and what success have you experienced?
So I would say some pretty measurable things that came out of this. We now have a 50% better compliance with the distributors globally than we did prior. I always had 100% out of North America. Asia, EMEA, and CALA were very spotty. I'm almost about 95% in EMEA and about 75 to 80% in Asia. I think this last trip will help pick that up. And now we're focused on CALA, which is always a challenge for anybody that's in this business. That territory is a little harder for a lot of reasons. But I would say that the single biggest thing is that now that they see that there's actually a benefit for them providing the data back to them individually as well as the partners, there's better compliance. The other thing is we have not missed a payment cycle on time now with the Salesforce since we implemented. And I've had a lot of great compliments from the national distributors that the Salesforce is now much more compliant and working with them. So the data issues and data integrity is all but gone away. There's some lingering things we're fixing, but for the most part, it's nothing like it was. The other issue is that since the data reporting is as soon as we get it set, I'm looking at reports and looking at verticals, I'm looking at different partner levels. We're beginning now to use the data more specifically to manage the partners, not just track them, but actually look at where we think we can grow. And we've got huge efforts in different vertical segments of the markets, so it's allowing me to break those down, by distributor, by geography, and look at who's doing what and what we think we can do to grow those partners. Huge benefit. Using the data rather than just basically building the data set's probably the biggest single thing.
And if I can continue with a couple of follow-on questions onto this. So when you talk about the use of the data, is it mostly to analyze, funnel and business activity or trends on inventory, or do you also try and do various types of analysis in terms of market, contributing to market penetration, competitive analysis, or any other factors that you might use it for?
Yeah, so there's really two answers to that. One, because I'm dealing with two sets of partners. The distributors that are providing this data to us are basically the ones that we sell to direct. So we have good data about what we sell them. What we don't always have good data is the sell-through. So the inventory piece that you mentioned is hyper critical. In fact, it's one of the main reasons why I got people reporting now, because I'm able to track now. If you're an indirect channel company, manufacturer, one of the key things you have to track in the industry, you got to track how much inventory is in the channel. If you build inventory and you think your sales are going great, and all of a sudden you find out all you've been doing is putting it in the channel, it's not selling through, nothing good's going to come from that. So us tracking that inventory and then reporting it back to the distributors, and that drives a lot of our meetings about A, reorders, and also B, about how we can help them sell through if it's getting stuck. So those are two critical things that we measure with the distributors. The second answer to the question is the second tier, which is the value-added reseller program that we drive that's so critical for us to reach the vertical markets. These are the customers that the distributors often recruit to our program. So for us to have insight into what they're selling and who they're selling it to is a critical part of the process. That's the data that I'm specifically looking at now, and I'm able to see how these guys are doing by vertical and the products they're selling, but as importantly, the products they're not selling. and maybe some of the verticals they're not reaching. It's also helped us now where we've embarked on a lead program, qualified lead program. So now I can take a lead from a particular company once I know their vertical, and I can place that into a reseller who I know is trained and already selling into that vertical. So those are the kind of decisions that we're making now that were not available to us prior to making this change.
That's interesting, and I'm curious, as you're filtering that information throughout the organization to the executive team and to your counterparts in different BUs and sales and marketing, are they familiar or aware of what the source of the data is, and do they question why couldn't we get this data before?
I think they're more pleased and grateful that we have it now. I mean, I think before everybody was so focused on the accuracy of just the basic data to pay the people and measure them. This has just been a huge bonus. I think it's resulted in certainly it's even causing us to look at some other things that we're doing in the company right now that I'm trying to fix as well. We're talking to you guys about in regards to incentives and rebate programs and things like that we think we can do a better job of. So I think it's opened everybody's eyes up that there's better ways to do things, and it's a lot better to focus on the business itself than the reporting that comes out of it.
Okay. So actually, just this thing brings me to another segue, because when I look at the list of things here, whether it's the compliance from the distributors and the timely and accuracy payment of compensation, this last bit that you mentioned about rebates and other incentives to the channel actually doesn't list here. And I'm curious, were you not experiencing any accuracy on channel incentives? It was just internal incentives that were the problem? Or did you also have issues there that you're hoping to fix with this solution now?
So what this does, so there's two different things. The channel incentives that I'm talking about are things that we would run for rebates and programs. But those are futuristic things I'm looking at now. But it did have an impact because the way our channel program works, as a distributor sells product to a value-added reseller, we track it by the amount of product they buy at MSRP. And we have different levels. So when they reach levels, they're allowed to buy product at a higher discount or better discount as they reach those levels, which improves their profitability. So when we didn't get those right, when the reporting wasn't right, when we didn't know all the purchases they made, couldn't map them to the right partner, did have a huge impact, which was all the manual intervention that we had to do on the back end. They would be calling us saying, hey, I know I've bought more than what you're giving me credit for, which would result in us going back in a lot of manual intervention and trying to figure out how we were going to find out or work it to figure out exactly how much they did purchase. So it did have a huge impact on that second level VAR that has been all but cleared up at this point. And so we have accurate reporting on their levels. The next stage for us now is as we run campaigns and promos, there's some stuff that Model N has that I'm interested in looking at to drive those.
Excellent. Thank you. So before we move into the Q&A session, what would be the key takeaways that you would like to share with our audience today?
Well, to the extent that anyone is, I guess you wouldn't be on this call if you weren't interested in this, but, I can tell you, having been 30 years plus in the channel, if your primary go-to-market is through channel, you have to have a way to manage that channel, whether it's one step, two step, or multiple steps beyond that. The key things like tracking inventory, sales performance, incentives, vertical expertise, pricing. I mean, the fundamental, what I would view building blocks, you got to have an effective way to track those. And again, I think the key takeaway for me is I spent way too much time trying to fix things that I think now I'm spending more time being proactive, and as is the rest of the team. So I think that's one of them. The other one for me is, I'd encourage everybody to really think about where you want to end up. The advanced sales assignment module is pretty powerful. I think we'll find other ways to do that. So I think, maybe an extra a day or two, making sure that you evaluate exactly where you want to end up and make sure you have the right tool sets to do that was the other thing. The other key takeaway for me, which I think, Hanan, you mentioned you were surprised. I was surprised as well at how the data itself would encourage our partners to participate. I did not see that coming, and as I put it into my rounds and communicating, we have these partner conferences, I started adding it to the presentation. It generated a lot of interest in them getting back data that they don't necessarily have the ability to get for themselves. So that was a huge insight for me. And then I would say the other thing is, just again, having someone from my perspective who is able to deal with various data sets. It's one thing for us to try to get every partner to be compliant exactly a certain way in a certain format. It's another way to work with what they have and what they can take out of their system, and then work with a partner that knows how to work with that data and then get it into a common format.
Excellent. Thank you, Ron. And actually, in our experience, obviously channel data management is one of the elements we bring to the channel space. We also provide quoting and pricing into the channel with our other solutions, and rebate management and others. And we do see that the old notion of channels being entities who would rather conceal information as much as they can from the suppliers they work with, especially the end customers and prices, etc. We've seen their behavior change once they, as you pointed out, get value back out of the process, whether it's cleaner data, whether it's information they didn't have, whether it's the ability to turn around pricing faster or get paid accurately and on time. Whatever the motivation is, we found that the channels do tend to actually comply when it's a mutually beneficial process. So this has been really good, and thank you very, very much for walking us through this. We did receive a few questions that came in, actually quite a few that came in, some of them in open forum and some of them in private chat. So I will try and go through as many of these as we can. And the first one that came up here is, I'm new to Model N, as we are a Channel Insight customer prior to the acquisition. What suite of services has Ron Ryan been using? Was it legacy Model N solutions or legacy Channel Insight solutions? And Ron, I'll let you answer that.
So yeah, it was the legacy Channel Insight. We actually started with Channel Insight. I think Model N announced the purchase of a Channel Insight maybe 4 weeks into our process, which quite frankly was a little unnerving to me in the beginning. But having said that, it went extremely well, and there was no issues with that at all. In fact, I think it added some resources. But I would say that the other thing is that I went to the conference that Model N just put on, and what interested me now is Hanan mentioned there's some pricing modules that come from Model N, and there's a new rebate module being worked on that I'm extremely interested in. So I think ultimately Cambium will be a multi-module user of Model N products.
Thanks, Ron. And for those listening, if I can add, there's obviously a lot more than you can learn about the Model N offering. Obviously, Cambium Networks, as Ron said, is a customer that came over from the Channel Insight acquisition using the Channel Insights Channel Data Management solution. And Model N has a suite of other applications ranging from what we call channel management, which is more focused on transactional aspects, whether it's handling credit claims and debits or rebate payouts or inventory management or other things like that, and more front-end activities like pricing and quoting. And I encourage you to visit our website and learn a little more about that, or reach out to your Model N contact if you have one, and we'll be happy to provide you with more information. The other question that came in is, considering the Model N reporting is limited to specific report type, and the other systems offer reporting on the user-specific format, how Model N looks for this aspect. So I hope I understand the intent of this question correctly. I think it's first of all important to understand the Model N has multiple reporting, let's call it platforms. And first and foremost, the one that Ron was referring to here was the one that is actually built on the Channel Insight platform as part and embedded into the channel data management solution. And that is a completely separate stack from the set of reports that you might be used to if you're using other parts of the Model N solution. So there's a whole stack of different reporting infrastructure and different report capabilities that are built all around the channel data management requirements that come over from Channel Insight. And again, I encourage you to reach out and schedule some time to review this and learn more about that. Within Model N, we have different stacks of reporting. We do have what you can call single table reports, whether it's just looking at inventory or just looking at pricing or just looking at POS. But we do have a separate stack of reports that go across the different tables, whether it's in our deal analytics application and or in our revenue intelligence application, both of which provide completely new revamped BI environment that is actually just released, came out in our Winter 15 release. So more to learn about there. And again, if I didn't hit this question accurately, please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'll be happy to answer more questions on that one. Another question that came in is second-tier management. Can you expand? Oftentimes, my disti ships to the reseller for configuration, and I lose sight to tying out to the end-user customer. Does second-tier management help here? So, Ron, I will hand this one over to you.
Yeah, so that's a good question, and you know, that's a function of your what we call our connected partner program. We have distributors are contracted directly with Cambium. In a two-tier model, we sell direct to distributors who then sell to value-added resellers. That's that second model. That's where most people lose visibility from that point forward. When we have channel partners or connected partners, VARs, that sign up to our program, they agree to give the distributor the basic information that we require, which is end user. We actually track price. We track vertical. Those are things that are required in our POS reporting and required as part of their agreement to be a Cambium partner. So those are the things that get submitted back to Channel Insight for them to put into the system so that then we can track from there those kinds of breakouts.
Okay, thank you, Ron. A follow-on question came in about are we an SFDC, Salesforce.com partner, and the answer to that is yes. Salesforce.com is a strategic partner for Model N, and specifically the channel data management solution integrates with a standard connector into Salesforce.com, so you can actually map point-of-sale data directly back to opportunities inside Salesforce.com. You can also generate reports, sales channel reports inside Salesforce.com running off the channel data that gets posted back into Salesforce.com. And again, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to show you a full demonstration of how Channel Insight integrates with Salesforce.com. And as a side note, our other applications, whether it's Configure Price Quote, CPQ, Revy CPQ, our Revy Rebates application, all of these are native Salesforce.com applications that run inside that platform and integrate with all the standard objects inside Salesforce. So let's see, I think we have another question that came in. You mentioned collecting data from distributors globally. Do you or have you considered collecting data from indirect resellers for better end customer visibility? And do you have incentives tied to end customer sales via POS data? So, Ron, why don't you take a first stab at this from the Cambium perspective, and then I'll add a couple of comments from the Model N perspective.
Sure. Yeah, I do get that data, but I don't require it directly from the second-tier VARs. I have them report back through the distributors. I have some fairly strong non-disclosure agreements with the distributors and those partners because it's oftentimes a trust issue that goes with that. We don't publish that data back out to anybody. We use it internally. So I get that data through them. And as part of their being compliant and part of the program, they obviously then are able to participate in the incentives that we offer in the program. Things like qualified opportunities, discounts, maybe specific or special rebates that would apply to them. We do use those kinds of incentives as part of the program to get them to comply to those requests.
Okay, thank you, Ron. And I'll just add to that from a capability standpoint, Model N can definitely collect the data from multiple tiers of resellers and value-added resellers. In addition to the distribution channel, as well as identifying the end customer information, we also validate that end customer information against our directory of close to 30 million validated end customers that we maintain and increase all the time. But we also are able to handle incentive programs with our rebates application and incentives applications. We can handle rebate programs that might be able to address what I'm reading into this question, which is, managing incentives tied to end customer sales via POS data, where we managed, rebate programs for, Nokia, which is now part of Microsoft, paying out $2 billion of rebates on an annual basis, and that's just one example of our customers. We've dealt with customers in multiple locations where very often you might have a purchasing process coming in from one entity, but you need to identify the end customer because you have an agreement with that end customer that will guarantee them either a price or a rebate. The Model N system is also capable of handling those processes as well. And again, if you want to learn more about that, we'll be happy to schedule a more detailed review of that. There are a couple of questions that were sent in on the private chat mode, so I will address those as well. The first question that came in was, how long did it take you to switch from one solution to the other solution? So your transition from the older channel data management solution that you had to the newer one from Channel Insight / Model N.
Oh boy, I think we started the bid process really looking at everything that was available. That took us probably about 4 to 5 weeks, another couple of weeks to evaluate all those. Once we decided on Channel Insight, we actually began to implement the process. It took about 90 days to get it right. And then we ran parallel systems from the old vendor and Channel Insight for another 120 days beyond that. But we were by the time by the time we made the decision to make a change, within 90 days. And again, if we had not decided to push all of the historic data into it, we probably could have moved a lot quicker. But I would say 90 to 120 days is probably a pretty good estimate.
Okay. And how soon were you able to start seeing a difference once you made the change?
I would say after the first 90 days, we, working, again, this self-learning tool I can't say enough about. I'd say in the previous world, we started sort of new every time. We'd wind up correcting the same kind of data. So this self-learning tool, after 90 days, began to get rid of a lot of the stuff that would come up. So I'd say, really, we started seeing, after we started giving you guys data, fixing it, and then the tool would pick it up, by the end of the second quarter, we had really few issues to deal with. So I would say, 2 quarters in, the data was cleaner and cleaner, and we then began looking more towards using the actual data itself rather than trying to manage the data.
Excellent. Ron, thank you very, very much for your excellent presentation and for entertaining all the questions that came in. Thank you very much. I would like to thank everyone who attended today. I hope you found this interesting and useful. And if additional questions pop up later in your minds, here is our contact information. My contact information is up at top, and Ron's information is down here. So feel free to take a minute and jot down the information. Feel free to reach out to us and send us a note, whether it's with more questions or ideas of how we can make these kind of events more useful for you. Thank you so much for taking the time. And with that, our webinar is over. Have a wonderful day and a great week. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.